Hello, my name is Nick Heyer, and I'm from Orange County, California. This is my final project for Harvard CS50. HeyerCode is many things. It's a containerized code running environment for 27 different coding languages, both compiled and interpreted. It's a learning tool for bridging the gap between different languages while being able to experiment with them in a hassle-free space. It's a code execution API for running code remotely and safely through other applications without any complicated file handling. And finally, it's a competitive coding gauntlet, where people may compete for the shortest time required to achieve all 10 stars. For years, I've been such a huge fan of competitive coding. I'm continuously amazed at how quickly the human brain can process such seemingly esoteric logic while simultaneously accounting for all possible edge cases. I may not be a ranking competitive coder, but I enjoy the entire process immensely. Heavily inspired by the well-written prompts of CS50, as well as a seasonal coding game called Advent of Code, I set out to create this idea that had been forming in my head: HeyerCode. HeyerCode is hosted via AWS on an EC2 instance that was previously being used to host a static portfolio site, as well as a few Discord bots. It's highly scalable and easily accessible from anywhere in the world. HeyerCode is built into a subdomain of my portfolio site, heyer.app. The backend of HeyerCode is also the backend of HeyerApp. While it may seem pretentious to use my last name as a naming convention, it's simply because I like the way it sounds. There are two layers between user requests and the server itself. NGINX handles incoming user requests. Those requests are passed to Gunicorn, a WSGI server, and that's then converted into Python objects, which is then passed to the Flask server. The code execution API takes advantage of the inherent isolation and configurable nature of Docker containers. Piston provides the compiler instructions and logistics of the code execution requests, then returns the value of the program standard out as a response. Code is executed on the hosting server itself under a multitude of strict parameters such as CPU, memory, and file space utilization. That means no more infinite loops. The front end is written in mostly standard JavaScript with a few libraries included for things like syntax highlighting of the written code. Code checking is also partially handled by JavaScript, but in conjunction with the backend server for validation. SQLite was chosen as the database engine for HeyerCode, as was previously used for Heyer.app. It is incredibly intuitive for something as straightforward as login and score management. Since I was hosting the server myself, I had the luxury of going with whichever database engine I wanted to. My primary incentive when creating HeyerCode was being able to express some creativity while writing fun story-based prompts and designing the randomly generated accompanying inputs and answers. When writing a prompt, I had a few things in mind. Allow the competitive coders to pick out the key details, values, and conditions of the prompt, but also allow the more casual coders to read through the prompt and potentially change their perspective on what might otherwise be a mundane algorithm implementation. Prompt's subject matter was usually inspired by things that I like Cyberpunk 2077, The Witcher, or Lord of the Rings. Difficulty of reaching a solution for each prompt is obviously subjective, but I feel as though they are gradually more difficult as they progress. For as difficult as finding a solution for the prompt is, I found the process of generating valid inputs and answers for said prompt to be far more difficult. I can now appreciate the hard work that went into something like Advent of Code even more so. As I said previously, the answers for each prompt are randomly generated, but they're also encrypted to some extent. Otherwise, any decent web dev could go around poking in the network tab, sniffing out answers, resulting in a lower solve time. I had a ton of fun creating this project. Lots of coffee and many sleepless nights went into HeyerCode. I plan on further developing this project, as well as extensively using the code execution API in other applications. This is my final project, and this was CS50.